All right, this is going to be a huge week in the market. A lot of opportunity to make some money because we've got some big data coming out. We've got the bears and the bulls both sitting on the sidelines trying to decide whether they should sell or buy some more like the rest of us. And here's what's going on that you need to be watching. We're still dealing with the number one problem the market has, which is inflation. And we're getting some important inflation data this week. Wednesday, we're getting the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. And then Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Fed Jay Powell will appear before Congress and give an account for what he's doing with the interest rate. So this week's data is going to play a big role as to help us make decisions about where this market's headed. Now, the bull case for this market is this. We are less than 1% away from all-time highs, which means that the price action is going higher. I've mentioned it many times, though, that we're going higher on lower volume and lower momentum. But the fact is, it's very hard to sell a market that's going higher and higher and higher. Take, for example, Meta, which has had 16 straight days of going up. Now, this will eventually come down, but while it's climbing, nobody wants to sell. And so from a technical standpoint, there's no huge sell signals on a market that's hitting all-time highs already in 2025. Now, the other dynamic is the fact that we have low volume. Now, normally I would reference that as a bearish dynamic, but today I'm going to mention the fact that sometimes it can be bullish or bearish because we don't have a market that's selling off on high volume. Now, it's going up on low volume, which means low conviction at the moment. But the good news is that it's not selling off on high volume. We are slowly drifting higher. And then the third dynamic is this, and you guys know it, it's AI. If we didn't have AI to prop up this economy, then I think we already would have fallen into a recession back in 2023, a much deeper pullback. But the fact is that AI is absolutely pushing these markets higher because it's pointing to more opportunity on a global level. Now, what exactly is happening in the AI front that I think is absolutely critical that everybody needs to be paying attention to, and I don't even think it's being talked about enough, it's that there is no cutting of CapEx spending on big tech. That's a huge signal. CapEx is basically the money that the big tech companies are investing in AI, and they're planning on investing $300 billion in 2025. Now, the other big news is that the U.S. government is right behind them saying, I've got one better. We're going to invest $500 billion on Stargate. You've got $800 billion. And today we got some interesting news from France. They said, hey, we're not going to be left behind in this AI race. We're going to drop $109 billion over here in France. France unveils a 109 billion euro AI investment as Europe looks to keep up with the US. What does that sound like to you? Well, it sounds like an AI war to me. And how do you win an AI war? Well, you spend. And where does that take us? Well, that takes us to talking about a couple companies that are going to benefit from that spending or significantly benefit from AI. And the first one is NVDA. We've got to cover it again because we're slowly moving towards earnings here at the end of the month. And I've got some important data to give you in the charts. And I want to remind you, we were not fearful. We bought the dip. And the biggest problem that I had was I didn't buy enough of the dip because it's really getting away from us in a good way to the upside. Let's go look at that chart. All right, I want to give you guys some important lines to be following. Right now, I expect that we are coming right up underneath this 140. Our next upside target is $138. Today, we're finishing up with a $4.58 climb, up almost 3.5%. An incredible move. I mentioned to you guys on Friday that all we had to do was open up above this 129.38 and it would be off to the races. And that's exactly what's happened. I mentioned to you guys more than once last week that we were already out of the woods and we are already moving back to this area. And what happens in this range is going to tell us a lot. But I want to give you guys a couple other very important details. I want to encourage you to consider, because we're not entirely in a safe zone on NVIDIA, right? This is still a downturn. And what would change this from being a downturn? Well, we'd have to make a higher high, a higher local high, not a lower high. And that's why I've been pointing out to you that the real truth about where NVIDIA is going to get revealed here right around $140 to $145. If we end up making a lower high in this range, well, then we could obviously go on to make a lower low, coming all the way back here to 108. Now, I'm not predicting that, but because that's a strong possibility, stop loss for me is set at $128. This is an area which served as resistance a couple times, and now we've seen it break through, which means that we could come back here. And if we came beneath it, it means that we would get that lower low. So let's be very clear. 128 for a stop loss. 138 for an immediate target this week. Then after that, 145 is our up target here as we move closer and closer to earnings ahead. And let me just recap what's driving NVIDIA higher. It's this incredible news. It's Stargate with 500 billion. It's the EU with 109 billion. And it's big tech saying we're stepping up and spending 300 billion. So we're not out of the woods of the downturn until we make a new local high on NVIDIA. If we make a lower high, it means we can go on to make a lower low than we've recently made. So keep that into consideration. But NVIDIA has been a company that I've been talking about when everybody else was fearful. I said, guys, we're buying the dip. Obviously, if you're following me, you know that we've done this before. We did this extremely successfully with Tesla, right? When it was $140, and we ran that baby all the way up, accumulating at 180, 190, 200, 220. And ultimately, I came and told you guys recently that we were going to begin to test the lows and to cool off on long-term investing. And that's exactly what we've seen. We've been coming back and testing the lows. So predicted that correctly over a long period of time. And here we are with NVIDIA. I have been predicting it correctly. So I hope that you've been able to follow me and make some good money. And I hope that you're able to pay close attention to the technicals as well as the fundamentals I gave you. We're not going to see a global economy spend $1 trillion over the next couple of years, and for a company like NVIDIA not to report some good earnings. Well, the data will come out here at the end of the month, and I think it's going to continue to climb until we get there. The biggest problem we're going to have is what's going to happen at earnings, right? And that could be a huge surprise. All right, let's talk about another play that I talked about in my last video that's hit the price targets that I gave there. And I'm going to give you some important trend lines as well, because it's not everything is going to go straight up. And that's Uber. Uber did exactly what I said in my last video. Very similar to Palantir, where I talked about that in a recent video and said, slow down on selling your Palantir, and you could have gotten an additional $10 out of Palantir if you just had waited a little bit, because the trend wasn't lower, it was going higher. Similarly, Uber has been moving higher, not lower. Now I'm going to take you into the charts and I'm going to give you my solution to taking profit for companies that are moving the way these have been moving, and that's to use a stop loss. You don't have to take profits. Now, if you're greedy and you want to try to guess the top, well, then you can sell. But you'll be very disappointed if tomorrow it makes a new high. And so the safer plan is to slowly raise your stop loss up as it's climbing until it gets to a place where you just simply can't, you don't have the guts to hold anymore. I think that Uber is quite interesting. Let me go show you guys that chart. All right. Yesterday, I told you guys that it wasn't going lower. It was going higher. I told you that 77 to 78 was going to be an area that we would hit. Well, we hit that today. Now, I want to point out some basic technicals. We're looking at the Bollinger Band, right? And whenever you get outside the Bollinger Band like this, oftentimes price will cool off and it will come back into the channel. So the way that I want to handle this, even though the price action is outside the Bollinger Bands, the fact is we can continue to gap up and continue to climb. You don't want to try to guess the top of everything. However, a reasonable spot for me would be to put a stop loss right at 76.50, because if we cross beneath the bottom of this candle, it means that more than likely we will come back into this range where previously had been resistance. Okay, but let me be clear. This thing could be moving higher right now. And so you want to give it a little bit of room to go higher. But you want to have some profit-taking plan. And for me, that's a stop loss at 76.50. I would love to see this consolidate and pull back in this general range around $72 to $75. And I think it could be a great opportunity to go long again, because I think this explosive move that we've recently seen on Uber is just the beginning. I think in the next couple months, we will see a $100 Uber. Now, I've been calling these correctly, and I'm going to talk about one more that I gave absolutely accurate predictions on, and then we'll wrap up this video, and we're going to be looking at the Alibaba chart. Let's go check that out. Okay, guys, we're looking at the daily chart on Alibaba, and I have to take a minute and just fuss at some folks who, when I told everybody that we were going to be consolidating around $100 and that I wasn't selling, and I said, guys, this is not a spot to sell because this bad boy is breaking out and going higher. And I predicted that we would get to $115. Then the following day, a little bit of choppiness. And I had people coming into the comments and saying, Josh, you were wrong. I shouldn't have listened to you. I'm telling you one thing right now. You've got to get control of your emotions, because it consolidated, and the only thing that you should have been doing was looking at buying more. Let's go back and look at that chart. This thing's absolutely had an explosive move and a gapping up candle. And I can tell you right now that it does appear, as I said, that we are heading to $115. Now, what type of take profit plan or scenario might you consider putting in place? Well, guys, you always want to have a stop loss plan. For me, it is a move under 106. Very similar to the last strategy that I gave you. This current candle that we just printed, we really shouldn't drop beneath it right now if we're going to get a continuation. If we dropped beneath it, then it would end up being a shooting star, right? And so as long as this move continues, it should not fall beneath $106.50. Now, where's the up target for this immediate move? Well, it's going to be $115, okay? Now, am I telling you that you should sell at $115? No. It's going to be something that has to be reevaluated, and very likely if we shoot all the way above 115 and get to 122, then very likely we would simply have to raise our stop loss beneath 115. This thing could even gap up tomorrow, starting the day off at $115. Guys, I've been telling you this is on the move. Remember some of the technicals that I gave you and try to, let's agree that the technicals have worked. Guys, I talked with you guys about this breakout that we had on this historic descending line of resistance. All of these were buy candles, and don't make me go into the MACD. They also printed a buy. All of that is why we've got this move. And where is this move going back to? Well, it's going back to test resistance. And where is resistance? At $115. And should you be selling? Well, that's your decision to make. I'm simply raising my stop loss. Currently, I'm raising it to 106. And if we get above 115, well, I'm going to raise it higher from there. That's the game plan with one of the most profitable stocks to own in this last couple weeks, which I gave just 3 weeks ago. I said Alibaba, one of my 3 top picks for stocks to buy in 2025 that were getting ready to have an explosive move. And you can see that we've had an explosive move. Now, in the Stocks with Josh Discord, I gave 4 trade setups today. 2 of them absolutely printed. Oracle and Uber absolutely were easy trades. These didn't fluctuate at the price levels. They shot right above and printed profit. Now, it's not always that easy. Now, the other 2 trades were not losers. They simply didn't signal, which is actually good, because if I give price parameters and the price stays within and doesn't give a false signal, personally, I'm going to take that as good technical analysis, and I'm going to call it a win as well. I'm going to be dropping another set of trade setups in the Discord tomorrow. Guys, you can come and check them out by going to www.stockswithjosh.com. It's the name of the show, it's the website, and it's where you can join the ChartGoat University Discord. Thank you for joining me today. We've had some beautiful plays. We've got huge data coming out this week, Wednesday and Thursday, and the markets are absolutely going to be moving strong. And remember, we're only, I think, 0.8% away from all-time highs, which means that this market is still climbing. You know, you want to have a stop loss plan, but you don't want to get out of this market because the market's going higher. Like I said, Meta up 16 days in a row. So if you had sold your Meta at earnings, I mentioned back at earnings that I thought Meta would go higher. If you had been scared, you would have missed out on a huge amount of profit. And so we're going to continue to go forward with this ever climbing market until it begins to show us signs of reversal. And what would that be? Well, it'd be a change in volume. There'd be some heavy volume selling, which, as I mentioned in my 3 bull case today, we're not seeing that. So stay strong. We're not loading up on the SQQQ just yet. 2025 is still climbing. I do think we're going to have a correction. I saw the chief analyst for Goldman Sachs talk today, and they're warning their clients that there's going to be a correction here soon. But he also said that they don't see a recession or a bear market. What would constitute a bear market? Well, that would be a greater than 20% decline, and a 10% decline is a correction. And so they're not even looking for a market crash. They're just saying that we're likely to get some form of a correction at some point here, which I'm also expecting. And so you want to have a strategy for that correction. What's my strategy? What have I talked about in this video? Well, it's always going to be one of 4 things. Trade the trend. The trend is up. Use a stop loss. I've referenced that on every play I've talked to you guys about. Control position size. Controlling position size is pretty important because this is where I see a lot of new traders get messed up, is they go too heavy when they don't really even understand momentum trades or trade setups. They just throw everything in on their first trade and they get a huge loss. You want to give yourself some time to learn. So position size is super important. And then if you made some money or if you lost some money, be careful you don't overtrade. If you're doing too much, right, you can tend to make mistakes. The most money-making opportunity is first thing in the morning when the markets are hot. There's going to be a lot of opportunity this week with the data coming out, and so we're going to trade the morning markets, but we're also going to trade the Fed speaking, and we're going to trade the CPI and the PPI. So come check out the Stocks with Josh Discord. Say hi in the comments and let me know if you made some money on Uber or Oracle or how you did today. Let me know. Love to hear from you. Peace and blessings. Take care.